Hey, gang. Looks like this is one of our biggest physics meetings. I'm really excited. If you came in and heard there was a significant paper that came out this week about neuroqueering physics, how we need better representation. We don't all look at the world the same way, and our way is really valid, especially around the neuroholographic stuff, which brings me to an announcement I want to make too. Don Joy, actually one of our great collaborators in Taiwan, has become involved with a journal. She's in charge of gathering papers around neuroholographic ideas like being connected to animals and the environment. And we came up with the idea to have CASY members all come up, if you're interested, come up with paragraphs. Instead of one of us writing a journal, we thought we'd just really blow the whole thing out of the box and have whoever wants to join add a paragraph of their experiences of being connected to things and so forth. So check out that post for details. As usual, if you're in the chat and you want something read out loud, just put read in front of it. As we go on with our discussion, raise your hand in the screen or use your icon so everybody gets a turn. And let's, of course, be very aware that everyone probably would like a turn. Let's give some room for that. We're always kind and respectful, so that's never a problem. Autistic voices come first. And with that, I'll bring up the topic I'd really like to get the ball rolling with. So I was talking to one of our members this week about anger. She was experiencing a lot of anger, and she was feeling bad about it. And we got to talking about how anger, things like anger, are in neuronormative culture sort of linear. Something makes you angry. It's just a discrete thing that makes you angry. You get angry, and then you get irritable, or worst case scenario, you end up getting violent or pushing people away. And we were talking about anger from a neuroholographic point of view, that it's actually a state. It's less of a linear progression for us and more of a state of being that we pick up from the things around us, our environment, the people we know, the state of the world. And it has less to do with boundaries and more to do with this kind of righteous way of being, I guess you could say. And that kind of lifted a burden for us, because most of the people here that I know are not angry people by nature, but what seems to get to us are things like social injustice or widespread disconnection that leads to harm and so forth. And that whole thing opened up the idea of how being neuroholographic affects all of our emotional responses, that they're not just discrete linear things that happen. I'm never fully happy without a tinge of sorrow. I'm never completely despairing without knowing that the world is going to go on. So there's that almost synesthetic mix of emotion and circumstance and way of being all coming together relationally. So I would really love for people to just, raise your hand, jump in, start talking about your experiences. Does this resonate for you? I just thought it'd be an interesting place to start. Oh, and one more thing, if you could mute your microphone if you're not speaking, that would be great for those of us who have auditory processing challenges. Thank you so much.
I raised my hand. So yeah, I understand the neuroholographic with emotions in a way where often I will pick up the emotions around me. Sometimes they're not even like mine. They don't even belong to me. But because, and it can be with animals, it could be with people, it could be with just the vibe in the room. Uh, I'm constantly aware of all of this. This is actually why I wear a lot of headscarves. I kind of feel like I'm protected a little bit. But it's definitely something that it definitely is can be disabling and can keep me from going to very crowded spaces because I'm just feeling so much. And my brain is taking in stuff that I don't even consciously realize. Like my subconscious is just, when I think about it, I think of a Rolodex, like the old fashioned ones they used to have on a desk, and you just flip it and it's like, because it's like multi dimensional and it's all the feelings and all the things happening. So the things that help me, because it can be a problem that needs to be addressed, because if not, I'm just like, forget about it. Forget about being social. I'll just stay in my room forever. But I can't do that. So I live a very meditative life. I really think a lot about energy and how I even express my energy and what energy belongs to me. And doing practices such as cord cutting meditation to kind of visualize setting a boundary, an energetic boundary between myself and the outside world. I also do that when I have to go to a hospital to visit somebody. I will do a meditation in my car. Like I'm surrounding myself with this barrier energetically before I go into a place. So those are just some of my things that I just thought of talking about that. So thanks.
That's great. Perfect. Thank you. I know a lot of times people are or can be reticent to take these things seriously because they've been relegated in, at least in modern neuronormative culture, relegated to sort of woo-woo, new age, people make fun of it or what, but it makes sense if we, as autistic people, are actually experiencing things in an interdimensional way, in an expanded, multidimensional way. These are just daily things. This isn't, psychic, quote unquote. It's not woo woo. It's just a way of being that really affects all parts of our lives. Anybody else?
You like to go?
Sure. What I would like to say is that I think we all share this experience that one of the reasons there's ubiquitous anger among people on the spectrum is that we feel as though we're always on trial. There's no crime, there's no charges against us, but we always feel as though in some way we're being tried by everyone else around us. That old Stalinist Beria guy once said something like, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. And that's what it feels like for us. That we constantly seem to trigger other people's negative reactions like this. And I think what occurs is what we're doing is because they kind of measure their emotional perception of the world against ours, and we tend to be very consistent. So their inconsistencies tend to make them feel vulnerable, like they're being attacked. And in return, we kind of get a similar response from them. And I'm not being critical here, but what's the word I'm looking for? All right, think of it this way. We are very focused. We have a great deal of attention to detail. We're very egalitarian by nature, and we're honest. All of our lives, we've been told these are virtues, and yet these are the very traits that people seem to resent in us. So we get a negative reaction from them, And our reaction is, but these are virtues. But they say that, but they don't really believe it, because most people spend their life presenting a public image for other people and for their consumption. And as a result, when they spend that time presenting this kind of public image to everybody else, they learn to be liked not for who they are, but for a false self that's not who they really are. And I think they are in many ways in as much pain as we are, because they have to hide who they are, and then they have to be liked for somebody who they're not. We don't do that. We kind of say, here's who we are. We are honest. And I remember back, I used to work at a college, and I worked with a woman. She's a very nice lady. But one day she said to me after a meeting, she said, I never know which is going to show up. And I'm like, well, the honest always shows up. If I agree with your point, I say so. If I disagree. But she took this as if I was siding against her. And that's one of the things that I think we struggle with, and that causes anger back and forth, is that they perceive their merit based on their relationships, based on, oh, I have a good job, I'm a supervisor, therefore I'm meritorious because of my success, because of my position, not because of what we do or how objective we are or how we put things together. So this causes a lot of social friction between us, and then we end up walking around all the time, not being invited to things, not, social status is not merit to us, and so we're anxious and upset and angry all the time. I'm sorry, I'm monologuing. I apologize.
Is that how you say your? Oh, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. It was. Yeah, I'm. First of all, thank you for putting this whole group together. I'm new at being able to find places I didn't even know what I was doing. I made a profession of this. I call myself a psychological intuitive, and basically, my whole family is riddled with neurodivergency, and I'm finally realizing, oh my gosh, me too. And it's been an amazing ride to like kind of realize, like, I've been looking through the world through a kaleidoscope, and all of a sudden realizing that I belong here has been like this opening and clarifying of my history and who I am. So I'm just, first of all, really grateful to be here, and that I was relating to also what you said, just the um the sensitivity, the really heightened sensitivity that we all experience. And I realized that I've made a profession of this. I mean, I teach interdimensionality to executive coaches and scientists, and I mean, I made a whole profession of this without knowing what it was that I was doing. And in a way, how exhausting, kind of being this kind of heightened presence all the time has been in my life. And I'm just grateful to be able to relax a bit and find a community like this where I feel much more like I don't have to kind of fake it. Like, I realized I would, the whole thing about masking. I mean, I'm just even learning all that terminology for what I've been doing. So I'm grateful to find this place to be. And it's funny. I spent, for somebody that's as sensitive as me, I spent like 20 years as a clothing designer, and they would, like, was saying, like, always wanting to wear a scarf. I always wore a black hat to kind of just dim down the intensity of all the experiences that I was constantly in. And I always felt better if I had a hat on. They talk about like crown chakras and just everything, the way that it would come in. It was so, I was reading the field all the time. And, now I created, I have techniques where I teach like high level people how to read the room, how to do this as a, taking their coaching abilities to the next level. I didn't even know what I was doing. So, anyway, I'm just grateful to be here and to have a chance to share. And that's sort of my piece for now. But thank you for putting all this together.
Thanks, Don.
So I just wanted to mention, because this is really funny, we sell a version of tinfoil hats now. I am not kidding you. Like $60. You can get a cap that's essentially got, you know, metal in it that I just laughed my butt off when I saw that. And then also to the point, I think that's energetic too, to a certain degree, because I will bounce up to a counter, like I'll get some groceries and I'll bounce up there and I'm smiling and I'm warm. And the minute I get within range of the checkout person, they don't like me. And it's so clear that this is an energetic thing. Like there's something, they feel something. And I read that they did a study that showed that that is the case. Autistic people can walk into a room and it's just like radar. People instantly have a problem with them. So interesting to explore. Yeah. So thanks for everyone's comments. I'll be quiet so somebody else can go.
Great. There's a comment that I'm going to read here. It says, when you say multidimensional, are you including dimensions beyond the fourth dimension of time? And if so, how do you even categorize those? Or are you talking about multiple dimensions in the sense of autistic people absorbing much information from many different streams, auditory, tactile, social, etc.?
Okay, so when the paper came out, and thanks for giving the link in the chat to the paper I referenced at the beginning. I've been doing a lot of explaining about the idea of neuroholography and a neuroholographic universe this week. So here's the model that I use, and it seems to resonate for people. So you imagine a black net stretched out on the floor. At every juncture in the net, there's a gem or a jewel that reflects every other single jewel in the cruxes of the net. Now, you take that, if you can, in your mind, and you make a sphere out of it. Again, every single little jewel is reflecting every other single little jewel. Now, if you can, think about infinite versions of that net that go to the subatomic and also to the known universe. So we're sort of in the middle somewhere, I guess. Still, in every single version, whether you can see it in a three-dimensional way or not, every single jewel is still reflecting every other single jewel. And in that framework, we would be more like nodes, shimmers of energy that go through that, or have our own kind of organization. But all of our thoughts, the things we feel, the things incoming, the things outgoing, are still going to be shared instantaneously in all dimensions through those little shining jewels everywhere. Someone said, is that fractal? Yes, it's sort of, you can imagine it as spiral or fractal or spherical, whatever resonates. But that's the idea, is that there is no beginning and end to a person. We are nodes, we operate in nodes. For example, an atom can be a node, a person can be a node, the solar system can be a node. All of those, though, continually resonating with the entire interdimensional structure. Hopefully that's helpful.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah. I feel like I have a lot to add
but also to like pick up on what everyone else is kind of saying, and like and I think it's part of it is me resonating with everyone and what everyone is saying, and as if it's on my own words and my own thoughts. And I really have always felt deeply connected to other people and what I would call the universe for majority of my life. um, I grew up very conservative Christian, so I come from that background, but I always felt that that didn't fit me, that there was something that I needed to tune into, that was something that was special for me to tune into. And so I definitely took more of a spiritual path for a good majority of my life. I was also a healer, a high priestess, spiritual practitioner. So a lot of my early research that evolved me into becoming an anthropologist came from researching other cultures, spiritualities, and things like that. I feel that when it comes down to is these synchronicities that we all see and feel that come in between these nodes that Dawn is speaking of, and these individuals that we are all tuned into this, compared to other people. We have a special ability to be tuned into some form of frequency. And this is something that I've always been aware of, but to find the words, to find the true definition, the true realm that that is in, didn't happen until now, until coming and learning from Dawn and learning about a neuroholographic world. To even have that concept has been liberating for understanding the concept of my mind and my reality and how that is connecting with everyone here. I definitely feel that my existence has led me here, as I feel that everyone here's existence has also led them here. And whether we connect that to a spiritual or religious or universe or whatever we want to connect that to, it is this sphere that Dawn is saying that we are all inside of that. We are all part of the earth and the universe and interconnected with the stars. I mean, I think I'm not sure the specifics, but I'm pretty sure we're like part stardust, and we have a lot of the same mineral composition as a lot of things in space. And just understanding like what makes a human, what makes an individual, what makes an autistic individual, I feel that comes down to the connection that we all share. And I'm very happy and proud to be here and to be connected with everyone. It's what I would have always said that I've searched for, which is my soul tribe. And that's a very much more of like a spiritual term, but it connects to this almost perfectly, because this is what this is. Our holographic world is our identity, our soul, and how we perceive the world, and how we connect to other souls and living and non-living things. I think it's very beautiful, unique, and above all, it's amazing to not be alone in that experience and to not feel crazy for seeing the world the way that I do, especially being in academia and in science. I can't say these things to anyone else. So having this safe space for us to come together has been a liberation, I would say.
Amazing. Thank you. Did you want to go next?
Well, I had an observation to make. What everybody seems to be fundamentally saying is that we are part of a network, and yet we feel like we're disconnected from it at the same time. We're in the middle of a network of people, and for some reason, the communication lines across that network are not connecting. So I would want to ask everybody a simple question. How many times have you heard the following statement? So what you're saying is, how many times at work or somebody said, so what you're saying is, and your response is, no, I'm not what you're saying is. I'm saying exactly what I meant and nothing more. Okay? And you'll get accused of making excuses, of backtracking, of not being able to communicate, when in fact we're being very precise in what we're saying. We're saying exactly what I mean. And I think the way to see that disconnection is that with neurotypical people, what they are constantly doing is they are constantly inferring and interpreting meaning. They don't listen to what you're saying. They're busy reading between the lines and all the subtext. And if you say to them, look, I'm repeating, this is exactly what I mean, verbatim, no caveats, this is what I'm saying, they'll come back later to you and say, oh, but I thought you meant this, or you were implying that, okay? And it's not that we don't communicate well, it's that we don't predict well how other people are interpreting what we're saying. Now, I think an interesting point that's worthy of mention is that in different cultures, I remember back when I was in school, they talked about high context and low context cultures. Did anyone else experience that or hear of that? So, like, for example, I don't know if you know this, but in Germany, Europe, Northern Europe, America, we're a low context culture where people tend to say what they mean more than other cultures. Japan and China are notoriously high context cultures where they will say very little. And there was once a English passage from an English book that was interpreted in the late 1800s, and the phrase was interpreted by Japanese to Japanese. The phrase was "I love you," and they interpreted it as "the moon is beautiful tonight." And we're all going, "What?" I mean, when I first heard that, I'm like, have you lost your mind? But supposedly, for people like us, those areas of the world are extremely painful, precisely because everything is based on context, and we don't do a lot of context. We're very blunt. So as a result, they disconnect from our meaning in that network we're talking about, and they add their own meaning, and they get it wrong, and that's where the social friction and the misunderstandings occur. Just a thought.
Don, I see you smiling and nodding.
Yes, I love a good paradox because, and I think that what you said is really accurate, and because many things can be true at once. I noticed when I was in Japan that I was so much more comfortable in the middle of Tokyo, walking around with herds of people around me. And it was because there is an awareness of one's energy in Japan, generally speaking, that we don't have, say, in America. Like, our energy in America just sort of blasts everywhere. And, that's good, that's bad. I'm not criticizing. But in Japan, again, this really deep awareness of energetic connections and how I think it's called Wa, the idea that you are in this constant neuroholographic connection with everyone around you, whether they're strangers or not. So just wanted to throw that in. So here's a question. Talking about not being able to talk about this at work. And this really strikes me as tragic because this is so involved in our way of being. I mean, I rarely have to ask for clarification, for example, from someone autistic if they're from around the world. Like, we really get each other because of that connection. And the disconnection that is touching on is so foundational to how we are not allowed to succeed in work or school or whatever. How do we talk about the way that we experience things without people just dismissing us as crazy. I mean, we can do this together and it's safe, but eventually, you know, we want to claim our place in the world. How do we do that?
I've wondered the same thing, honestly, myself, Dawn. Trying to communicate the autistic experience to neurotypicals has been something I've been trying to do on my own, and it's very difficult. There's a lot of pushback and misunderstandings, and so I'm trying to navigate those misunderstandings to be able to have an even ground where they get to say their perspective, but then I also get to say my perspective, and then we're able to kind of find that mutual line of where it can connect, because neurodivergent to a neurodivergent, we speak similar languages. Autistic to an autistic person, almost identical languages, but to them it's like we're an alien, and what we're speaking to them is goofy in a way. And it's been hard for me to get taken necessarily seriously when it comes to these types of things. But I still plant seeds. I think the seed planting really helps. But I think it's gonna have to take direct initiative effort and potentially autistic people coming together, and so that it's not just one person speaking up about these things against a group of other people, and that maybe there's a buddy system. And sometimes I wish I had someone else to tag team in on some of these conversations, in the midst of it. And I think that we are stronger together, and that we can definitely come up with some plan um, to make that known.
Did you want to go next?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a quick thing to this discussion, but quick, because I already talked. But how much of this is cultural in our Western society of, capitalism and consumerism and the way that we're taught in school? I think that a lot of the disconnect I find is that people don't really know their authentic self. It's almost like they're given these scripts. And for some reason, my autistic brain rejects all the scripts. It just can't. I don't know if it doesn't have the cognitive dissonance. I don't know what it is really, but it's just I can't follow that script. But other people, it's like we're highlighting where that script lies. And there's usually a wound attached to that because it's a wounding culture. And so now we're kind of picking it, pouring a little salt into that wound. And I think that's why we get a lot of that um, disconnect and backlash, even because we're just operating from an authenticity that is different, not to say anything's good or bad or worse, but it's different. We operate with a different programming and it just doesn't mesh well with the others. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Great. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm kind of putting together several things that have been said. I went through my life not knowing why I was different. I can't remember how old I was the first time somebody said, "You're not like everybody else, are you?" And it's only been in the last few years, and I'm now that I've discovered why I'm not like everybody else. And this spring, I started therapy, and my therapists, all three of the people I saw while I was shifting around, agreed with my self-diagnosis, and one of them steered me to the RADS test. And in the direct by doing it, I discovered why my experience didn't quite mesh up with what I thought of as autism and what a lot of other people experience, because I get the social cues in terms of I'm very social. I can talk to people, I can look them in the eye, I can make small talk, but and I only scored like 10 are that are coming back at me, they go up right over my head. People often tell me, oh, you're so funny, when I have not intended to say anything particularly amusing. But thinking about the concept of synchronicity and holistic imaging and the concept I think we get things all at once differently than neurotypical people, and that makes us not understand a whole lot of things, including not understanding where are these questions coming from when I was totally clear. To us, you were totally clear. To them, they're the same way we can't pick up their social cues. They can't pick up this holisticness that we experience and know is for us to be the normal state where everything is integrated, that we're not really separate from the people around us or the experience around us, that we're very much enmeshed in it in a very different fashion that seems to me in neurotypical people to be full of many more barriers than we are. We think that sometimes, and society tells us that we're the ones that aren't getting the cues, but it's that the kind of cues they work with aren't holistic, don't react to the whole, they react to these little pieces like what's judging on. And also, I'd like to add for the people who said something, I also frequently cover my head and have found that it definitely helps with sensory overload and concentration.
Great, thank you. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I won't say too much about the first thing because I feel like I'm kind of a broken record on it. But I think like a lot of like what we like conflict with in society is like stuff that's like there's almost kind of like a mass conspiracy to like victim blame or like whatnot. It's like the need for like a just world and but, like we can't really do that. I think a lot of us on the spectrum or that are autistic, they can't just like victim blame. Like we need something that's like rational to explain things. And I think when we question that, or like when we question authority's ability to be like, no, it's okay to like, I had to quit special ed. I used to be a really great actually teacher. Because there's like, always like some horrible unethical thing going on, and the other teachers are always like, just keep your head down, your mouth shut. It's like the way you can like best serve the kids. And like, but I'm not serving the kids, and like my last year teaching, my mantra every morning was just like, keep your head down and your mouth shut for 2 years, then you get tenure, and then they can't do the damn thing about your big mouth. Like, and I couldn't do it. Like, there's just like always something unethical going on. And the other teachers all knew, they always would like agree with me, and they'd be like, I mean, if you drag me into this, I'm gonna tell the truth, but like, I really want to just be left out of it, you know? And that's most people like. There's like this conspiracy to like just like let it be okay to like get through the day, and like they know like everything but they really don't like it. Like obviously the administrative people, the authority, like really hate it, but also like the other people that like know and see it's wrong. They don't like it when you pull them into that. Like they want to just like do the easiest thing they can and like help the kids the most they can like in that like confined little system. So I wanted to sue the school on behalf of my students because their parents didn't want to deal with it for various reasons, and I bet it's not possible. Like as a teacher, there's like nothing you can do. I talked to a ton of lawyers. Like they're like, we'll take your case if like you apply for jobs next year and like you don't get a good job because like obviously you're a good teacher. And like I had like my reviews from them. They're all like everything's great, and then all of a sudden they're like everything's horrible. And like I told them like that's like when I figured out I was autistic was like during that job because from like not having be able to like really make eye contact, like I can usually like look at your like kind of like to like not even able to like look in her direction, and like I also just learned about like high masking women in one of my like classes, get like my autism certificate like renewed. I was like, oh my god, and then she started like using that against me, and I was like, no, I'm like going on mental health leave. I can't take this anymore. But I can't remember where I was going with that. I kind of got lost in my like anger with that situation. Oh, but that's kind of where I started. Like I couldn't just like ignore it because like there's like I had students that were like being dysregulated for no reason because like teachers didn't want to like listen to like this kid like needs this accommodation. Like that's not fair to the other students. I'm like that's not how this works. Like, and then like my kids would be in pain and like I couldn't just ignore that. Like I wasn't able to like I tried to like deal with it in a way that like wouldn't make me like like this like, huge antagonistic person to like the administration. I couldn't like it wasn't possible. So I was like, I can't do this job anymore. Like, it's just too painful, like, every single time. Like, a school I used to work at, I actually built up this, like, huge, like, proof that they were, like, openly racist. And, like, ended up in the news in, like, the last, like, decade. I can't really go at it once for, like, being racist. And I was like, yeah, it's been really bad for a really long time. Like, and they're also super ableist. They didn't have it's supposed to be one of the best high schools in the country. They actually were only taking the top kids like illegally, and they had no sped there until they were sued for it. And then they only had to sped out in the bungalows, and then they were sued over that. And then they just like threw a few English classes out there. But aside from a few students whose parents were like lawyers or doctors, all the black students at the school were in the special ed program, and like admin was super racist. Like they in front of me, they told one of my students his kind didn't belong at their school, and I'm like expected to just like ignore this. But I think that's like a lot of the problem though. Is like we can't just like ignore these like huge things. Like for some reason, everyone else just like can and like be able to sleep at night. I mean, like I literally can't sleep at night if I try to ignore something like that. So I feel like I've been talking for way too long. So I'll more my hand and turn my camera back off. Sorry.
Did you want to jump in?
Did you say Dawn?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say the whole idea of scapegoating absolutely does not work in a neuroholographic model because one person isn't just one person. You can't isolate a problem and then kick it out of the system because there's no end to the system and there's no individual problem. I was talking to somebody the other day about the old philosophy question, would you kill Hitler? And my teachers and the students being horrified when I said no, because that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, yes, he was awful, terrible person, clearly had a leadership role, but every single part of the system is involved in a situation like that. So yeah, scapegoating, not a thing for us, I don't think.
Yeah, I would like to actually kind of respond to help her. I think I can help her out with the question she proposed. Um, Let me frame a context for this. Think of it this way. The world doesn't reward divergent or original thought. What it rewards, what everybody else rewards, is simple ideas that make everyone feel included. Okay? So when we speak, we're often very detailed, but our ideas tend to get ignored while oversimplified feelings kind of get validated and supported. And the reason the neurotypical people respond this way is because an honest mirror makes people assess themselves and not the external world. Okay, when you're talking with them and you're saying, here's what I believe, it's making them assess themselves. And easy feelings for most people make them nod and go, yeah, but complex, detailed truths make them question themselves and their own beliefs. Okay? And you'll see this every day that they'll dig in because when they start questioning their own beliefs and themselves, it lowers their social status. And almost everything, if you frame everything pretty much of how they think, It's in context of where they rank in the social order, okay? And we're hard to read. People spot us, and it turns on their pain receptors in their brains because we're not readable in the traditional sense. They can't look at us and go, I know what that person's feeling. So now they're in an uncomfort zone that they can't control, they can't predict, causes them problems. So one of the things I think you might consider trying that might help you interact with other people that are not, on the spectrum, is start phrasing what you say in terms of questions or suggestions. Kind of, you're not explaining your thoughts, you're kind of presenting questions about things so that it's not taken as a personal reflection as, oh, I'm failing because I don't know the details or the facts. Okay? Because they'll see that as a perch of superiority, whether they like it or not. They don't like to feel that. So when you make others feel smart, objective, and correct, they don't respond negatively to you. They may feel like they're superior, but they will stop having that negative reaction because they feel validated. And that is, I think, the most difficult thing for people like us is we don't do that. We don't stop and say, what emotional reaction will our words cause? We're trying to say, here's what I believe, here's the facts. They're taking that fact and they're interpreting it as a personal hit to their social status, and they're resenting us for it. If that helps.
I respectfully disagree, though, because, I mean, one of the questions we were talking about is, because this is such a way of being for us and it's culturally valid, we clearly have a culture. I mean, we can't always just continue to spoon feed the truth to people or make them comfortable or, go way over the meeting in the middle to make people comfortable. So how do we do that while honoring what you're saying about, not making them feel less than, but also really asserting that there's this whole other way of being?
Well, I didn't say always. I think you have to pick and choose your battles. Okay. And there, um, it's, there is no win for us. At the end of the day, we're going to feel betrayed. We're going to feel the people that we were honest with, we took care of, we supported, and they turn on us because they put their social status ahead and the need to fit in, if you will, above personal friendships. I know that's a difficult lesson for us to accept, but it's true. And I think the thing I would take away with it is we do this to the extent that at the end of this, we are left standing and not brought down. So I would say, no, don't do it always. Make a judgment call. But it is the reality that we face. They are not going to change. They are going to continue being who they are. So you have to make a judgment call as to when you need to manage that as opposed to when you need self-expression.
So just to add to that, I actually have a way of seeing things that's very, like, if somebody is responding to me in a way, I can kind of see, oh, this has nothing to do with me. This is something that happened to them in their childhood, or I just happen to be that mirror um, that is kind of dredging this wound up. And in a way, I don't really hold a lot of resentment towards others or anger. I don't have a lot of emotion, I guess, attached. To me, it's more like, okay, this is the process. This is a process that I start around other people. Is it bad or good? I don't really know, but I have more times than not have had people come back to me later and understand that it was a trigger to maybe heal something or to bring something up to their attention. um, that has happened before. So I don't really have, and also I'm not a very social person. I might see like one person a month. So like I see a lot of animals, people not so much. But so it's not something that continuously happens. And I am very good about talking with people and masking overall as well, in certain situations.
think one thing that strikes me is, this intense social preoccupation in the neuronormative side of the world. And every interaction appears to be some kind of sizing up or, determining of some kind of pecking order. So when people are talking, uh, they're not really listening to understand what's being said. It's more of they're trying to make an assessment of where they are relative to you. So when they ask questions like, so what you mean is, I mean, you knew what you mean, but I think their minds are so socially busy with different interpretations, probably have nothing to do with what's, the matter at hand, that they need to do that to clarify. Like the fact that someone is direct and speaks what they're really thinking is maybe not such a common thing. So when someone does that, it maybe throws people off. And the other thing is, what I'm thinking is that uh, the different communication styles is that if you're speaking to somebody, uh, you have a message to convey. The the first part is, what kind of message is it going to be. So if you have a truth, for instance, that you're trying to put out there, what words do you use to convey that truth that you're trying to deliver. But that's one way or one goal of the communication. If another goal, if other people have different goals of communication, then and you're looking for some kind of truth or some kind of honesty in what they're saying, and I think it's going to come across as like very confusing. So who is it likes to talk about different modes of communication, but this kind of reminds me of some of the stuff she talks about is like, when we say things or when we choose words, uh, it can be so difficult, because what I'm thinking and what I'm saying, how do I pick exactly what I need to say so the other person has the same idea, right? But if you're not in tune with what you're trying to how you're trying to communicate with each other, then it just can go off the rails like real quick. So anyways, that's my 2 cents right now.
I mean, it's just the largest culture gap I have ever seen as an anthropologist. Neuro holographic people and neuronormative people. It is insurmountable because of the dimensional and energetic aspects, I feel like. I just wanted to jump in and make sure everybody who wanted a turn got a turn. So if you feel like things are going too fast, yeah.
Did you want to say?
Yeah, and I can't figure out how to.
I just I meant to layer that before, like the thing I meant to actually talk about was just the spectrum is so big. It covers so many things that are often like completely conflicting. Like like I talk incessantly. Like I talk when I'm anxious. I talk, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to shut me up no matter what my emotion is. Unless I'm just so upset, I'm like completely shut down. That's a lot of people on the spectrum are the complete opposite. Like there's a lot of traits we have that are just complete opposites. I think it's really hard. Just like even if this wasn't about people, even if we were just like had a group about I don't know edible plants or something that was just like this big, like where there's so many conflicting things. I think it's hard to communicate about it. Like that's like our brains like want to categorize. It's like part of like as humans what we do. So like we really really like to have these like neat discrete categories where there's like a rule for it, right? Like and especially with autism, there isn't even like one single trait. Like
it used to be the theory of mind thing, which I know Don doesn't like. We have some disagreement on like whether or not that's even like a thing that exists. I think. But like there used to be that, and like back then, so I started taking special ed classes back then, and like autism, like master's levels classes. I was like, oh, I'm basically autistic, except for like I'm super empathetic, you know. Um, but I think like having this category, like, it's hard even. I see conflicts all the time, like even within the autistic community. Like, well, we're not like this, and people being like, well, we are like this, and I'm like, well, the problem is like it's both, and like our brains want to say like, well, there's this category with this rule, and like that just like really doesn't exist at all for autism. There really isn't a rule, and I think that's really, really, really hard for people to just like work with. Like we don't really know how to communicate a category that doesn't have like rules that it's bound by. I think that's like where a lot of our like problems are, like with neuronormative people and like within the autistic community itself. That's all.
I've always said that we're very sticky, like there is no center point. We're just a sticky ball, and people feel like they plug in different ways. I actually think that's a really beautiful thing. I want to make sure that somebody, if you haven't gone yet, if things have been going too fast for you to jump in.
I think has had her hand up for a while, so I definitely want to make sure. Please.
If my two things got read, then and I missed it, then tell me and I'll stop. But it might sound different anyway. So actually, I'm gonna respond to what Richard is saying though first, and that is I just kind of think that the spectrum is kind of like people tend to fall on one extreme or the other. It seems like that we have traits. A few traits are in the middle, like kind of the mathematical average, but of a particular traits. But for the most part, people on the autism spectrum will fall to one extreme or another if you imagine traits as a bell curve. Anyway, aside from that though, I really wanted to respond to that conversation about communication that was starting a while back, because I thought one thing also is that I found that um, that if I try to give a whole bunch of details and am really specific, then a lot of times people just completely miss what I'm trying to say. It's like they understand me less even. So that's like a big communication barrier. And my problem is I can't actually be more succinct. So I think you were asking the question, Don, like, well, what do you do? And what I have done is let people know at times I'm autistic, and I tend to give a lot of details, and I actually really struggle to be succinct. So you might have to just interrupt me if you have a question and ask clarifying. At least they know I'm not trying to be condescending, like what's being talked about. That was it.
Great, thank you. You had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I was really struck with the comment about the spectrum being so wide that I don't know, maybe finding your place in it's a little bit hard. Just because my experience of the CASY things I've attended for about 3 months now is this is way more autistic people than I've been around in my entire life. And it's been probably close to 20 years since I personally more or less figured out that I was probably autistic, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how. I had no ability to get help, find out anything, do anything. I just went on living my life going, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense, and remained close friends with the person who'd helped me figure this out. And then when they died 13 years later, I was sort of well, now I guess I'm probably going to have to do something about it because grief was just about to destroy me and my marriage and everything else. And eventually now, after 4 years of therapy and dealing more with autistic stuff, I'm now finished therapy, but I'm working to try to adjust to autistic spaces, which is hard for me because I don't always feel any more comfortable in autistic spaces than I ever have in neurotypical spaces. But I see from coming to these attending these meetings that I hear everybody says something that I connect to, which is not true in your average neurotypical gathering that I attend. And so I pull all these things out and I'm like, okay, and I'm not, then I'll think, oh, but I don't exactly do what this thing they're talking about or think that way or whatever, but overall there's always this connecting piece, and I have now two other people that, I mean, I don't know them in physical life, but I talk to in Zoom one-on-one conversations, which is very almost identical to talking to my friend who died. It's that kind of really intense. Oh my god! And we can talk over each other for an hour and a half. It's like, oh, guess we better go do something else. But so I just really connected with that idea of it being so broad that it's sometimes hard to know exactly where you fit in. But I'm appreciating listening and hearing everybody's experiences. Thank you.
I love it that we become more than the sum of the parts. Every person is their own little organ in this larger mind. And I think that's very literal, the way that we connect energetically and with our thoughts and our experiences. And so we need everyone. We need every single person that comes here. And I'm so glad to hear that, in the great singing sea of things, that you find things that at least once, a sticky place to land. That's good. I'm really happy to hear that. I need to go soon, but if you guys want to go on, you're more than welcome. I don't know what Roger's got going on, but I'll let him. Roger, do you have to go, or do you want to stay?
Yeah, I do have to head out as well. So I think this has been really a fantastic conversation as usual. I think what you're saying has really it really is nice to have that feedback. I think it hasn't always been like this, and I do believe that Don, the stuff that you've been doing has really helped us come together really nicely. But I think really to realize that this is a global community. So if you are, so when people say I haven't connected with people like I connect with people here, it took a sampling a long time to get to this point, because it's a big world, and it's needles in a haystack pretty much. But I think the consistency over time really has grown it to what we are all sort of experiencing right now. And I think this is it really is. I think it's a bit of a dream come true for a lot of folks, including myself. So I want to thank everybody for really joining and being interested and contributing, and it's going to continue to grow. And I believe that with the tech and with all of our minds together working together, then a lot of these things in the past, I'm hoping we can leave them in the past.
Yeah, we reached a milestone this week of 1.4 thousand members on Facebook. And I'm always so proud, I've said it many times, but always so proud that there has been so little friction. Even the people who have disagreed, it's for the most part been, full of goodwill and trying to clarify. 1.4 thousand people with this much harmony. I mean, it is a dream come true, and that's not about me. That's about the quality and the and the openness and the wonderfulness of the people that are here. So thank you all so much. And we will do another physics group again next month. Stay tuned for the announcement. We've got other really cool things coming up. You can go to the Facebook page. There's the events tab. If you click on that, pretty much everything that's going on will be listed there. We put the direct Zoom links on there as well, even if it's at the last minute. I try to do a good job, but you know, sometimes it comes down to the wire, and thank goodness for Roger for that. So so yes, we'll all see each other soon, and have a great weekend wherever you are in the world. Bye, everybody.